What is good, guys? Welcome back to another video. Did we hit a bottom on SPY in the overall market? We got a lot of news, a lot of things to cover today. Gonna be giving you guys some plays for next week and some stocks to look at. With that being said, Friday, we kind of closed a little bit green, but a little bit more red to say. But we got Tesla up 5%, maybe Tesla coming back. We got some big stocks like Microsoft, Google, Meta, Palantir, Apple is up. We got Nvidia down 0.70, and I think for the weekly, we're down 0.72. But with that being said, for the weekly, we got some stocks up green for this week too, except for Nvidia. But Nvidia's not really down that much, only a zero point 0.7 loss, which isn't that bad compared to how we looked, a few weeks ago. With that being said, if you look at the weekly, we're looking pretty great with the stocks overall. And Broadcom, we're down 2% for the week. But if we go to the day, we're pretty green. But with that being said, we're going to be talking about some news. So let's start off with some news, show you guys some supports and resistance and some of those plays. So first off, you got Rivian Automotive shares fall after Piper Sandler kind of downgraded the stock. We are getting a lot of downgrades and upgrades and some holds, stuff like that. So keep in mind that the investor sentiment can really fall underneath how the price targets are looking. So we did see Rivian fall a little bit, but it's not looking too bad. Rivian's a decent one to hold long term, but you got to get at a decent stock or at a decent price. We are up 6% for the day, I think on Friday. XRP, so people are saying that XRP is possible to make the biggest breakout, which is kind of insane. And people are saying that we can get up to that 30-cent mark. If we go look at XRP, I'm sorry, I didn't mean this to say 30 cents. I'm going to say the $3 mark. With that being said, people are saying that XRP can make a breakthrough, so maybe back up to that $3 mark. With that being said, I mean, we're already at 2.6. Another one is Shiba. Everybody knows Shiba Inu, but basically people are saying that this one can also make back up to that I don't even know 0.00003 mark. People are saying that we're at like a decent level down, so keep this level on your mind, because if we can break below this even more, it might just keep on falling. But with that being said, we can make a rally back up as we've seen here. We've seen a rally come back up. It's not going to come back up fast, but with that being said, this is like you can at least 2x your return and maybe even 3x your return. I'm not saying put all your money into it, but I personally loaded up on this, and I recommend just looking at these levels and see how it moves, because they're already making a little bit of a break upwards. But keep this one on your mind and on your radar for the future. We got Tesla trade-ins on pace for record high. So people are actually recommending people to trade in their Teslas and stuff like that. And honestly, just with all the heat that Elon Musk and Tesla overall is getting, it is looking pretty bad right now. I'm not even going to lie. But Tesla, honestly, I think we can get to a decent buy range. But with that being said, we are going back up. We're trading at that almost at 250 level. See how it reacts with that 250 level. I honestly wanted to load up some more at the 200 level, but we couldn't really get that. I think Lowe's was like 217. I personally loaded up some at 220, just a little bit. I mean, I was just going to do that, and the dollar cost average as it fell, but I mean, you're still decently up at that 220. We do got Intel's new CEO wants to kind of save its falling AI chip. They're still trying. Intel has been falling, but it's been getting some love at the same time. With that being said, if they can honestly save the falling AI chip, we can get some decent things. With that being said, Dogecoin breaks under ascending triangle, 16% crash incoming, question mark. So if we do get a crash, you can play it on the upside once we get that crash and once we hit a bottom. Looking for bottoms is kind of hard, I'm not even gonna lie, but with that being said, I do recommend looking at Dogecoin and coins overall. So most active stocks, we got Ford, Nvidia, of course, strong buy. Tesla, people are saying to hold it. Palantir, another hold, but we're at that $90 level. You would have loaded up that $80 level, and even that's, I think, 78. You would have did decent. I loaded up a little bit down there. You got Apple at a buy, 218 right now. I think Apple can get back up to that 250. But with that being said, let's look at some news. So Trump tariffs live. So basically, he's saying that he's willing to be more flexible, basically. But with that being said, we do have new tariffs coming out April 2nd and some reciprocals coming out the 2nd also, or retaliation tariffs, basically. So keep that in mind, because this might bring the stock market down even more. We might be green for a little bit, and then at around April time, it's going to go back down, which is honestly in 2 weeks. So the SPY, we snapped our 4-week losing streak, which is kind of dope, but like I said before, man, once those tariffs come out again, April 2nd, we might see it on the downside for a little bit more, but we might be upward from here on out. I'm not saying be bullish, but you know, just keep that in mind. I talked about this like past two videos, but the Cybertruck is like basically they have steel trim pieces, and honestly, with the pictures and everything like that, it looks like it was held on by glue, and they recalled almost all of their Cybertrucks, and this brought down the stock even more. Kind of. I mean, we are up on Friday, but I think Thursday, that's when the stock dropped even more with that. So, yeah. But Apple is reportedly losing $1 billion a year on its streaming services, which is kind of insane. But nobody, I mean, I don't use Apple streaming services. I don't think anybody really uses it that much. But if you do, then good on you. But I think Netflix and stuff like that is just killing the game, especially if you look at Netflix stock. You know, you can add that to your long term and just forget about it, honestly. NVIDIA to open quantum computing lab, basically. So, I mean, he's been coming out with a lot of things. So he wants to collaborate with scientists from Harvard, basically, and just great schools, and to kind of, you know, bring up the quantum computing a little bit more. Because I mean, honestly, once you get that quantum computing, man, AI is just going to be great. So this isn't really going to load, but basically, Malaysian Airlines is buying Boeing's. Boeing has been going up a great amount, and yeah, but there some Nvidia partner stocks are getting basically a boost. So some stocks like COHR, you know, you got SMCI. SMCI is doing pretty decent. APH, you know, you can just screenshot this list honestly, but I do recommend looking into this and researching a little bit more. They do have some deals coming up that brought up some stocks too. Nvidia, honestly, man, I was kind of hoping on Nvidia coming up maybe that 130 level, but we didn't really break any key levels with this meeting. And the meeting is, I think it's over now. But another thing, we got the same thing with Shiba Inu, what I was talking about before. Basically, breaks from multi-month channel, and they're predicting 154% rally to that 328. But I'm gonna just say, man, if you get in, I would sell at that 0.28, you know, 0.28 right here. So just to make sure you get out in time, you know, I mean, unless you just get greedy. But Nvidia to spend hundreds of billions in US during Trump's term. We already kind of know about this a little bit, but I mean, a lot of companies are basically putting a lot of money into the US with these tariffs and stuff like that. So I guess that's one positive thing, but not really, you know. We got some. So basically, this is something on the side, but a hidden 60 FPS mode in a game basically gives us hope for a Switch 2 upgrade. So right now, I think the normal switches, you got the Switch Lite and the normal Switch, and those switches, I think they're only capped at like 30 FPS, 30 frames per second, which I mean, it saves battery life, it saves performance, but if we can get a 60 FPS model, that would be insane. And especially with other people coming out with things like this, you know, you get the Steam Deck and stuff like that. But I mean, this might bring up the stock a little bit if you're into it, but keep that one on your mind. With that being said, this is some of the new iPhones. iPhone 17, they're gonna have a bigger bezel apparently. I was personally checking this out because I'm thinking about getting an iPhone 17. But with that being said, they're just going to be changing up the whole background of the iPhone. And honestly, I think either the iPhone 17 or the iPhone 18 is going to be one of the biggest upgrades, just because like AI is just getting better and the AI chips are getting even better. So that's basically it. But with that being said, I mean, I already showed y'all the charts on Shiba Inu, but I mean, we're currently trading at 12, and if I mean, you could double that to 24 and just sell it at double. But honestly, man, I think we can only go upward from here. Just wait for the tariffs and stuff like that to go out. So basically, Americans are falling behind on car payments. So this is the percentage of borrowers at least 60 days late on their car payments. And if you do the math, it's easy math. It's 2 months behind on their car payments, which is insane. But this is just showing, you know, inflation and stuff like that, and just showing, you know, inflation basically. I'm sorry, but if you guys want this chart, there goes that chart. We also have a number, I guess, 46,000 Cybertrucks due to the panel issue. And then we also have the 9 best stocks to grow your dividends. If you guys are interested, you got Microsoft, Moody's, Broadcom. Broadcom is a decent stock. Honestly, I remember what was it, like a year ago when they went that split, man, Broadcom was just pumping. You got Oracle, John Deere, Air Products, Zoet. I don't know how to fucking say that. Lowe's, MSCI. So me personally, I have some shares in Microsoft, of course, Broadcom. I have a little bit in Oracle. I've been kind of loading up recently just because of that Nvidia deal. And then I think Lowe's is a decent one. I don't know about John Deere. I mean, John Deere is decent. You know, they're big into the farmers market, stuff like that. With that being said, let's talk about how the overall market is going, though. So basically, U.S. stock market ended the day with gains, snapping a 4-week losing streak. Like I said before, the Dow Jones average rose by 32 points, the Nasdaq 92 points. So this rally was kind of comments from President Donald Trump. So he did have a meeting on Friday, which suggested flexibility with the tariffs, easing some investor concerns about escalating trade tensions. The shift is sentiment provided a boost to the major indices. With that being said, I think we can go one or two ways with the tariffs, honestly, because honestly, a tariff is probably like one of the easiest things to take back. All it is signing a piece of paper and going public about it, literally. And that's one way that we can go about this, where we either not, I mean, in the perfect world, we can just cancel the tariffs and or we just ease the tariffs. This is kind of what we seen on Friday. We kind of seen some easing on tariffs, but we can go one or two ways. We ease the tariffs a lot, and or we just stop the tariffs overall and the markets start going up, and or we just ride it out and wait until like all the numbers and stuff like that comes in, and then you'll see the market overall go up. With that being said, we are seeing a lot of people investing into foreign markets, so taking money out of the US markets and going into the foreign markets, so keep that in mind. So before, we kind of seen people take out of the SPY, take out of, tech market and go into like staples and stuff like that, and more dividends. That's why you see dividends and staples go up, and then you see the SPY go down. But now we're kind of seeing people investing more into the global market and then getting out of the US overall. So you'll see everything dropping basically. With that being said, let's talk about some corporate earnings. So one that I was kind of hyped to see was FedEx. So their shares dropped more than 4% after the company reported third quarter earnings of 4.51 per share, missing analyst expectations of 4.54. They did 3 cents off per share, but that's a big number. Their revenue of $22 billion slightly exceeded forecast of 21 billion. The earnings miss likely pressured the stock and reflected broader concerns about shipping demand. But we got some Darden restaurants. DRI shares surged after a parent company, Olive Garden, and Longhorn Steakhouse reported third quarter adjusted earnings of $2.80 per share and 3.16 billion in sales, which is insane. The CEO is very optimistic, and he had a lot of great comments about sustained consumer spending. So, if you guys are interested in DRI, you might see it up to the upside even more with those, optimism. The global market, so Asian market showed mixed results with Hong Kong's Hang Seng index dropping 2.19%, and China's CSI 300 fell 1.52%. So with all of these, Trump tariffs remarks and stuff like that, is kind of showing global uncertainty also. You also have the Federal Reserve's recent decision from earlier this week. We talked about this before, but to hold interest rates steady. But, he kind of pumped up the market a little bit. Jerome, pumped everything up. Some other things, we have Nike up 0.3% after hours, suggesting a modest positive reaction to its earnings or guidance. Micron Technology gained 6% after hours, likely due to strong earnings report and optimism outlook for semiconductor space. And we already talked about FedEx. General sentiment. So the positive close on Friday, driven by Trump's tariffs flexibility comments, may set a cautiously optimism tone for Monday, unless countered by weekend development. So always look into the news over the weekend before you invest on Monday, just to see how the market will look and also how the market overall opens up on Monday. So keep that in mind. Other things we have. So we have an ETF that follows SpaceX. It is called XOBR. With that being said, this one, the reason why I'm looking into it to invest into this one, because it moves, or SpaceX is kind of not really publicly traded. You can kind of trade in the, Tesla, kind of, but not really. We did see something great recently with, them saving the astronauts that were stuck there for, I think, over a year. And we just seen that recently with SpaceX. You guys can hate Elon all you want, but with that being said, SpaceX is a great thing, especially SpaceX with their internet services. That is, I mean, the internet services, they're receiving almost more than the Verizon, and Verizon is the number one US. But the thing about, you know, their space or their services, it's global, and they're going to get military contracts. Military is going to be using it. It's basically a little bit easier because it's satellite to satellite rather than normal internet. And like airliners and stuff like that, they can get internet for cheaper and probably even provide free internet. It just honestly, man, everything with SpaceX is great, especially with their future plans that they have. They actually want to send robots to other planets. They want to actually have a civilization on other planets, which is insane to think about too. And also, Karma is also they also invest into Karma, and they recently just had buy now pay later with DoorDash. There's a lot of memes out there. Honestly, I mean, I think I'm not gonna say it's not stupid, but it's kind of gonna get people more into, debt is okay, and understanding debt. And I think it's gonna make people get in those bad habits of getting into debt. I don't recommend getting into debt. It is no interest on your food, of course, but with that being said, if you really need to do payments on food, maybe just, go to the store, buy some cheaper food. But with that being said, we do have some other things too. We have GEO. So this one, so it showed, so it's been on a good uptrend, but we did kind of have a recent dip. With that being said, we do got some gaps to fill upwards, but we do have bigger gaps to fill downwards. So keep this one on your mind. We might have missed out on that rally because especially at that 27, you could have still had, 10, almost 10 more dollars on not a penny stock, but like a cheap stock. And especially with options and stuff like that, you could have made a decent amount of money. But with that being said, let's look into some price actions and how stocks are moving. So the overall SPY, the thing about the SPY is that we can either go up or down from here. We have gaps to fill both ways. With that being said, all the way up to the top, the highs at 615 level, and then all the way down, we could probably even see it 413. But honestly, just look at that, 496 to that 512. That's just overall, in a couple of months, we're either going to see it break new highs or get down to these 500 levels. Honestly, don't think we will, but you never know, man. That's just how it moves. We're trading at that 565 right now. We've been kind of a little bit more jumpy, kind of just like fluctuating around this 570 level and then down to this 550 level. We've just been kind of jumping on that recently. We did see it bounce off of that 570, as you guys can see. Just look at these wicks, but we've been bouncing off that 570 a decent amount. So honestly, that's a level that I want to look at next week. If we can break above that 570, we could be bullish. And then if we break below that 560 level, because we bounce off that 560 a little bit, we break below that, I want to look at that 550 level. And if we break below that 550, we're going to be even more bearish. With that being said, some other levels to look at, I recommend looking, let me zoom in a little bit, but I recommend looking at that 565, 570, or sorry, 568.8, and then that 570, and then that 571. Sorry, we bounced off that 571. I said 570. I wanted to round it down. But we bounced off that 571. But that 571 is going to be key, or that 570.92. But I mean, basically 571. But if we get another bounce off of that, we can probably see, a downward trend a little bit more and then just keep on fluctuating basically. But I do want to see how it reacts at 570.9 and that 573.73. And then if we break above that, 576, and then maybe even get up to that 580, start looking positive a little bit more. With that being said, to the downside, I will be looking at that 563, 561.8, 559, and then 557.5, and then 555, and then 550, like I said before. With that being said, honestly, man, I mean, people are saying that we kind of hit a bottom. I mean, I honestly think we did. But with that being said, we aren't really like moving up that much neither, but we are making higher highs as we see, but like over time basically. So, but we did have a big push downwards. So we got to just see how it reacts. Cause if we can push up, make another higher high, we can be positive. But we are decently positive. But with that being said, you take the elevator down, the stairs up. So we are kind of forming some stairs to say. That's what I like to say, but we are kind of forming some stairs. But it just depends on how this moves because we could probably, go up to that 568 or honestly, at 568 and then bounce down even more and then start a little bearish trend. So, SPY, man, just be very, very cautious on Monday, especially if we get some bad news. So yeah. With that being said, we got Apple. Apple's looking pretty bad. Not even gonna lie, we've been dying down a little bit. With that being said, I do recommend looking at that 208 level, that 205, that 200, that 192.5, and that 190 to the downside. Back up to the upside, we got some decent levels to look at. I would look at that 221.4, that 230, that 235, that 240, and then that 250. If we can break above that 250, we're gonna be overall bullish. And then that 260 level next. With that being said, NVIDIA, honestly, man, we had that meeting this week and we were kind of just up and down the whole week, just like we seen with SPY. But if you want to look at it to the upside, I will look at that 123.8, that 128, 130.18, 133.9, 137.3, 141.02. Maybe we can finally break above these highs right here and then get up to that 150. And then Tesla, man, Tesla, we've been following. You guys know all that bad news. And we have been kind of fluctuating. I mean, we've seen this with the overall market, just up and down. With that being said, Tesla is looking a little bit more positive than the overall SPY, as we've seen. But with that being said, if we can break above this 250 level, we can probably even get up to that 263.6, that 290 first, and that 300, that 320, and that 340. I'm doing big levels because Tesla, I mean, if we can get some momentum up to the upside, a lot of people are getting out of Tesla right now. And the thing is, there's so much cash that can be put back into Tesla. So keep that one on your mind, because if you could start going green, the momentum is just going to carry it up. So honestly, I'm kind of pumped to see where Tesla goes. But we did have lows of 215. I loaded up at 220. Just let's see where it goes. But we can still go down. I kind of want to see it at that 200 before I load up some more. But with that being said, we might see it go back up to the upside even more. With that being said, smash the like button, subscribe if you guys are new, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Comment down below if you guys have any questions. Join the Discord and those links. You can get some free stocks. Peace out.